Welcome into Bengals Breakdown. I am your host, Stone Shields. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on a Tuesday afternoon. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be spending some more time talking about Trey Hendrickson. Shortly after we put our video out yesterday, Ian Rapoport went on the Pat McAfee Show, and he had some more details on what exactly is transpiring right now between Trey Hendrickson and the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, coming up on today's show, some Bengals draft rumors. Cincinnati went to a particular pro day yesterday that we are going to talk about. Also, Mike Tannenbaum of ESPN released a mock draft from a GM's perspective. We're going to break down that mock draft and who he has Cincinnati taking at number 17 overall. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that sub button for me right now. If you have not done so already, that's youtube.com/BengalsTV. We are trying to get to 18,000 subscribers by the end of the month of March. That has been our goal all month long. We got about a week left, a little bit less than a week, in the month of March, and we still need 223 subs to go. I know it's kind of a bit of an uphill battle, but if everybody that watches this video hits that sub button that isn't already subbed, we can get there off of this video. So help us out right now. Hit that sub button. Help me out. Help yourself out as well for all the best Bengals coverage here at Bengals Breakdown, and hit that subscribe button right now. All right, let's talk Trey Hendrickson once again on today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Ian Rapoport went on the Pat McAfee Show, and he had some details on what exactly is going on between Trey Hendrickson and the Cincinnati Bengals. Nothing I would say too out of the ordinary, but I do want to break down some of these quotes and give my opinion on them as well. So let's get to it. This is what Rapoport had to say. He said, "The Bengals do not like letting good players leave the building, even if it's for a huge draft pick. They don't like it. They like to draft, develop, sign their own guys, and I think they get annoyed that people think that they don't sign their guys. So Hendrickson is awesome. He deserves a lot of money. I think his next contract is going to be above $30 million per year. Is it going to beat Maxx Crosby? I don't know, but it's going to be over 30. And I think the Bengals are working. I know the Bengals are working on it, and I know they would like to keep him in the building. They would like to pay him. And I think they would like people to stop saying, why don't the Bengals pay their guys? Because they do. And I think getting Hendrickson done at a value that makes sense for both sides would be a great way for the Bengals to say, to be like, see, told you so. Look, I kind of disagree with that part about the pay their own guys, right? I think the reason why Cincinnati wants to do this is because they believe Trey Hendrickson is a really good player and can contribute to winning, and also they want to be taken as a serious organization. So I don't know the whole pay their guys thing. Like, obviously, we saw Jesse Bates leave the building not too long ago. I'm not sure if that angle from Rapoport is necessarily something I agree with, but I do completely agree with the fact that, hey, Cincinnati wants to keep Trey Hendrickson around long term. Essentially, they want to keep more good players, right? They did it with Ja'Marr Chase. They did it with T. Higgins, and now I think they intend to do it with Trey Hendrickson as well. Now, the money behind this is very interesting. I think it's a lot more interesting than what we saw with T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. I think those deals kind of were, you had groundwork for them, right? Ja'Marr Chase was going to blow everybody else out of the water, and then T. Higgins, you kind of had a feel for what exactly he was going to bring in. But Hendrickson's interesting because he's 30 years of age, and edge rushers make so much money. How much money are the Bengals going to be able to allocate towards Trey Hendrickson? Again, I agree with Rapoport. I don't think that necessarily he's going to sign for less than $30 million. He's going to be looking for at least 30. I think that's kind of the benchmark when I think about Trey Hendrickson and a deal with him. Is Cincinnati going to be able to make that happen? I don't know. Time will tell. But three things can happen here when you're talking about Trey Hendrickson. You can either trade him, right, which we talked about on yesterday's show. It would be hard for me to move off Trey Hendrickson unless I am getting a first-round pick. And it doesn't seem like a team wants to give up a first-round pick at this point. Also, you could extend him, right? Keep him around for the long term, 3-4 year extension, and he can kind of finish the prime of his career here with the Cincinnati Bengals. Or you could do nothing, which really wasn't an option with certainly was an option with Ja'Marr Chase. You could have done nothing with T. Higgins after you tagged him, but that would have just been kind of a rough situation, right? Obviously, if you do nothing with Trey Hendrickson, it isn't the best look as an organization. You're certainly going to tick him off, and he could perhaps hold out going into training camp, make a mess of it. That certainly could happen. But he's under contract, so you really could just let this thing play out, and then ultimately he decides to leave next season. But I do kind of want to play devil's advocate here for a second. You got to be careful that you don't just run things back with the same team that you had last year, right? Bengals bringing back T. Higgins. Bring back Ja'Marr Chase, bringing back a lot of people. Osai, right? B.J. Hill. Those were kind of surprises, at least to me, that they ended up doing those things. This team last year didn't make the playoffs. So if you just kind of bring back these guys, I don't think it's really makes much sense for the expectation to be go win a Super Bowl if you're kind of running it back with the same roster. So that's kind of the only angle where I would say, moving off Trey Hendrickson might not be a bad thing. Your defense has stunk the past 2 years, and he's been the one bright spot. So kind of the argument is, well, would it have been even worse without Trey Hendrickson, or would you have been able to do some other stuff there defensively, pay some other more people? Obviously, we will never know, but I do want to be careful about running it back with the same exact team because clearly that wasn't good enough last year. What would you do with Trey Hendrickson? Leads us to the pinned comment of today's show. 3 options. What do you want to do? Trade, type T, extend, type E, or nothing, type N. Essentially just have him play out this contract one more season. Let me know at the pinned comment of today's show. If the ad comes here on YouTube, totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let's talk Mike Green. At the top of the show, talked about how Cincinnati went to a particular pro day yesterday. Well, they went to Marshall's pro day, and 29 teams also went to Marshall's pro day because this is a guy in Mike Green that a lot of people view to be a top-of-the-line target in the NFL draft, and a lot of people have him going in the first round and relatively early on in the first round. I'm not going to say he's a lock, but kind of at this point, it feels like it would be a shock if he didn't go in the first round. More on Mike Green around the corner. But first, we got to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals Sideline hats are out now. They are available now. You can go get them. chatsports.com/Bengals Sideline. I've got a few of these myself. Absolutely love rocking them. Obviously, it is the offseason. That's totally fine. Doesn't mean you can't get some Cincinnati Bengals swag, courtesy of our friends over at Fanatics. One more time, that's chatsports.com/Bengals Sideline, and we will put that in the comment section and the description of today's show. Let's talk a little bit here about Mike Green. We spent some time talking about Green here on the show in the past, but he's a guy that was able to be really, really productive for Marshall this past year. When you take a look at what he was able to do, look at all those sacks, 17 of them. Look at all those tackles for loss, 23 of them as well. And I think people really, the concern with Mike Green was, okay, he was at Marshall playing in a weaker conference. How was that going to translate when he was going up against guys in the NFL? Well, really, Mike Green fully burst onto the scene. Obviously, he got a lot of recognition for his performance at Marshall, some end-of-the-season awards as well. But when he went to the Senior Bowl and was still able to play really, really well against guys that are from bigger schools, obviously, that really stood out to people when it comes to Mike Green. You hear a lot of Von Miller comps when you're talking about his ability to rush the passer. Obviously, that is very, very intriguing. This is a super athletic guy, does have a wrestling background as well. This guy that played multiple different positions. Started as a wide receiver when he was starting out playing football, then played linebacker, and then obviously has finished here at that edge spot. But Cincinnati really needs to do something about this pass rush room. Obviously, we still have Trey Hendrickson there on our depth chart, but there's no telling at this point if he's going to be back for Cincinnati. And if he's not, you really are in a world of trouble. But even if he is, Joseph Osai is that too. I don't think is good enough for you at that spot. You've allocated some resources in previous years to that edge rush spot, and it hasn't really worked out for you. Joseph Osai was able to kind of come on strong at the end of the year. That kind of salvaged some of these stats for him, but Myles Murphy, man, in 13 games played, only 1 TFL, no sacks. You took him in the first round a couple of years ago in 2023. He certainly appears to be kind of a whiff at this point. So a lot of people, myself included, think it would be a good idea for Cincinnati to draft an edge in the first round. Obviously, there's the off-the-field concerns there with Mike Green, but from a football perspective, you really, really got to be intrigued. All right, let me know. Grade Mike Green as a round 1 prospect. A, B, C, D, or F. Let us know in the comments section. You can do minuses or pluses as well. All right, let's get into some more Bengals draft rumors here on today's show. Mike Tannenbaum of ESPN came out with a mock draft. We want to kind of break this down. He's pretending that he is a GM for all 32 of these teams. That's kind of was his mindset when he did this mock draft. When most people, most draft analysts, Jeremiah, Kuiper, they're doing it as if predicting what the teams are going to do. That's not what Tannenbaum's doing here. He's doing what he would do if he were those particular teams. Also, no trades in this one. It is just strictly the picks that we have right now. Let's get into some recent picks here. We're not going to go through the full draft like we have in previous videos, but the last 6 leading up to the Bengals' 17th overall selection. You got Will Johnson going, the cornerback out of Michigan, Teteroa McMillan going to Dallas, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State, Tyler Warren, Kenneth Grant, and Matthew Golding kind of rounding out what you've got there off the board before Cincinnati picks at 17. Now, 5 best available, according to me. Here who I have as the best guys that were available in Tannenbaum's draft to be potentially selected at number 17 overall. Shamar Stewart, he's the traits guy, right? Really impressed people at the combine. The production wasn't necessarily there in college. Really high on Jihad Campbell. I think he's a guy that can play linebacker in the NFL right now. Mike Green, who we just spent time talking about, have him on this board as well. And then the 2 safeties, who I think both are ready to play right now as well, Malachi Starks and Nick Amanwori. Really high on both of those guys as well. And also of note, Tyler Booker was still on the board for Tannenbaum here at number 17. So let's get into who exactly he has the Bengals taking. Bit of a surprise here. James Pearce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. That is who Tannenbaum has Cincinnati selecting at 17. That's who he believes would be the best decision for them to select at number 17 to help with their pass rush. More on Pearce in a minute, but this is what Tannenbaum had to write for ESPN. He said, credit to Cincinnati for re-signing T. Higgins and Mike Gesicki and extending Jamar Chase to keep the offensive core intact. However, the Bengals also gave Trey Hendrickson permission to seek a trade despite his 35 sacks over the past 2 seasons and Sam Hubbard retired. There's potentially a big hole there. While Pearce was more productive in 2023 than 2024, 10 sacks versus 7.5 last season, he has elite pass rushing traits. He plays with leverage and explosion, though he has to improve against the run. Now, a lot of people have linked James Pearce Jr. to the Cincinnati Bengals, but as you get closer to the NFL draft, it seems like people are less and less high on James Pearce Jr. He's a guy that has a lot of upside, but also has a lot of things that he needs to fix. A lot of people think he needs to gain some weight, right? He is a little frail for a pass rusher in the NFL, as Tannenbaum alluded to. Not very good against the run either. That certainly has to improve. You're looking at him as kind of a pass rush specialist. There's also some concerns with James Pearce Jr. about whether or not he truly wants it like some of these guys. Is there some effort issues when it comes to James Pearce Jr.? Look, his ceiling, I think, is really, really high when you're talking about what he can do out there on the football field potentially for the Cincinnati Bengals, but there is a lot of question marks. But I'm not completely knocking this pick. Again, a lot of people have linked James Pearce Jr. to the Cincinnati Bengals, but also a lot of people have James Pearce Jr. falling out of the first round. Really, there's only one lock, in my opinion, at that edge rusher spot, and that is Abdul Carter early on. After that, you got a lot of questions when you're talking about Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart, James Pearce Jr., Mike Green, several others as well. It's going to come down to your scouting department, going to come down to Duke Tobin, making sure you pick the best one if ultimately that is the position in which you could go. I'm looking for a guy that can contribute right away. There's some question marks on whether or not James Pearce Jr. has the ability to do that for an NFL team in 2025. Make sure you guys give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. All of our Bengals Breakdown content will be posted to my Twitter page. So help me out. Give me a follow over on